Hi everybody, this is Kristina Cobler. I am the Color Guard Director of Education for Winter Garden Percussion of Oklahoma. This is the first in a series of videos that I hope to do throughout the season with tips, tricks, and tools to just get you through the season, to help you be successful in everything that you do. If you're a percussion person or a wind person, there may still be some tidbits that are good for you. We'll see. So the first thing I want to talk about in this video is training, because let's face it, that's where we should be at this point in the season. It's early December. And I've got 3 parts I want to talk to you about when it comes to training. The first thing that I think is kind of essential when you're training your groups is that your training needs to have the show in mind. What I mean by that is the style that you're looking for, the character that you're looking for, even the tempo and the count structure. Those things that you know are going to be in the show, you need to be training in that style. So let's say you're doing something that's got a lot of jazz in it. Wouldn't make a lot of sense to spend too much time on ballet. Now, there's some good ballet fundamentals. Everything in dance comes from that. But we don't necessarily have to spend a whole lot of time on grace if we're going to be doing a lot of hard punches and things like that. Match that style in your training early on, and then when it comes to that show, your kids are going to fall naturally into it. One of my favorite groups from this was about 15 years ago, so you weren't born yet, did like a tribal show, and it was well done. But the kids had such great movement through it, and they had these hard hits, and they were doing all these things. And I remember asking that director, like, how did you get your kids to understand the mechanics of what their body needed to do? And they said, we started it from day one. They didn't spend their time on jazz walks and all those things that we typically do, which are fine to do, but they spent the time knowing what their show was and doing that kind of movement in their blocks and their across the floors. Some other key things are, if you know what your character is going to be, when you're doing your across the floors, when your kids are doing their equipment block, have them practice that character in mind, know that style. Don't just go through the motions of doing 100 drop spins. If you're going to be Cinderella, you're Cinderella doing 100 drop spins. Have them have that character in mind. Have the show in mind at all times. Another key thing with that is whatever time structure, whatever tempo that your music is in, match that with your training. For example, if your show's in 3/4 or 6/8, you may not want to do, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in your standards. Instead, break it down in threes: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 with a carve. Or your single, instead of being 1, 2, catch 3, becomes 1, 2, 3, catch. Something along those lines, so that the end product is in mind when you start laying down that foundation. Now, that's part 1. Make sure the training has the show in mind. That's the end result. The second thing I want to say is basic training doesn't have to be so basic. We all should be doing some kind of movement block, some kind of equipment block, some across the floors. But we don't have to stop there. Excuse me. I would make sure you would include some across the floors that combine equipment and movement. Okay. One thing I always include is improv. I improv with my kids all the time. It does a couple of things. It teaches them how to get into character. It also teaches them about recovery. We talk about recovery points all the time in color guard. If you drop your equipment, what do you do? If you forget the work, what do you do? If you get your kids doing improvisation on a regular basis, they have that innate training to be able to have those recovery moments. Long ago, again, I'm old. There was this group, national group called Everybody. If you don't know, you should know. And actually, my instructor from OSU was in that show. She was, it was the Acid Queen show. I don't even remember what it was called, Jukebox Diva or something like that. And she was like the main queen. And there's a part in the show where she drops her saber. Oh my God. World finals, drops her saber. And the way she picks it up, she's just in character and she's that diva the whole time. And that comes from having a sense of what your character is and those improv skills. So include those. I would also include, if you're thinking about certain transitions in your show, as far as maybe I want to go from a block here and I want it to hit in a circle over here, practice those things. You don't even have to practice it with your show music. You don't have to wait till those moments when you're writing the show. Practice those transitions. When my kids at Ader, we did like a a Frankensteinish. We is like Frankenstein show, but it was Frankie Stein from Monsters High. But we did a lot of practicing of the coming back alive and being shocked and coming up and out of that moment. And how do you move like that? We included that in all of our basic training before we even started on the show. So your basic training shouldn't just be blocks and across the floors. Include more. With that said, too, your time is precious, right? And your training time is even more so. Don't waste your time trying to perfect things that are not necessary for your group to be successful. What I mean by that is, like for me, when I train my kids, I don't start with drop spins, and I don't spend a lot of time on drop spins. Not that they're not important, because they are, but I don't think I've ever written a drop spin in a show, except for in the fall sometimes when we have filler work. So I spend more time on carves and windmill flourishes, tossing, things like that, getting their body moving under equipment, those kind of things during training more, because that's what I'm going to write. And then when I start to write, it comes a lot quicker. So I don't waste time on those things that I know I'm not going to need. Left-handed stuff, it's up to you. If you as a choreographer are going to use it, absolutely train your kids in it. Absolutely. I train my kids on left-handed singles all the time, and left-handed windmill flourishes, carves. We do that. Just because as a choreographer, I like to put those things in. But if you know you're probably not going to use it, don't waste your time on it. Okay? Just make every minute count. I want to say this gently. You want to train above and beyond what you need for your show. You do. But don't push it to a point to where A, your kids are bored, and B, they get injured. I would never do anything. I try really hard never to do anything that's going to cause my kids to get injured, because I couldn't. I have a hard time with that. So be thoughtful in your training. So train with show in mind, but training doesn't have to be so basic. The last thing I'm going to say, and this is kind of the hardest nugget to hold on to, is you really should be training your kids for about 4 to 6 weeks before you start writing the show. And I mean this in all sincerity. You're laying a foundation. Granted, it's a foundation for your show in mind. But, number one, if you start writing your show early, for most kids, they get very bored with it about the end of February, beginning of March, and you still have a month to go in the season. Number one. Just my personal opinion. It's what I've seen. I've done this for over 20 years. Number two, the better you lay that foundation, the quicker they're going to learn. Okay? I had, back in 2016 I had a friend come over to watch my kids rehearse, and they watched my kids learn 64 counts plus at the end of the show in less than 30 minutes. And the reason my kids, and that's talking not just equipment, choreography, that's drill and equipment that they put on there, plus we had a little dance feature at the end. My kids learned it that fast because I had laid down that foundation so thick. Okay, they knew what I expected of them. They knew that's somebody in a big piece of equipment over at my neighbor's. I don't know what's going on. Maybe you can hear it on the video. But they knew what I expected of them, and we spoke the same language. So I could say, okay, you've got 4 counts of carves starting top, then you're going to row, and you're going to run that direction. You guys are going to do-si-do. I could say those things in a quick manner, and they picked it up very quickly because we had practiced all those things. We had rehearsed all those things, and those were fundamental. The key thing about fundamentals is, and this is why, your armed forces always train over and over and over in their basic training, is when you're in a time of high stress, you're going to fall back on how you're trained, okay? The best that you're ever going to perform is never going to be better at a contest than it is at a practice. That's just a psychological fact for you, okay? It might be cleaner, but the kids are not going to have the energy. They're not going to have the stamina any greater at a contest if you don't push it at training. And stamina is key. Oh my goodness. It may only be a 4-minute show, but they got to keep going. They got to know how to recover. They got to know every single bit of it and to perform up, right? If they're not practicing those performance skills in training, they're not going to do it at performance. Okay? They're just not. Decades upon decades upon decades of research shows that the kids are not going to all of a sudden turn it on show day. They're just not. Okay? They need to be aware of that. I can't tell you how many times I've had kids that would not do full out runs and they wouldn't perform. They wouldn't do anything with their face. Oh, I'll do it when we're at the contest. No, you won't. You won't. You're gonna freak out a little bit until you get comfortable with performing, and you're gonna fall back on how you're trained. And if you're not training to that level, those performances are never going to be to that level. Now, why do we talk so much about training in color guard? Because most of us are on the regional A sheet or the A sheet, right? That includes your regional Bs and your scholastic Bs, your novices. We're all on those A sheets, and the big amount of points comes from your excellence, and that excellence comes from training. Judges know how to spot a well-trained group versus a well-rehearsed group. Now, well-rehearsed group, these are the groups that don't spend a lot of time on training, but they learn their show in like August, and they keep doing that show over and over and over and over and over. And it looks different. I'm telling you, from the perspective of someone who's trained as an equipment judge, it looks different when you're well-rehearsed than when you're well-trained. That doesn't mean this group might not do well, at least for a little while, but in the long run, the well-trained groups are going to come up and they're going to be better. And they're going to grow. They're going to be the ones to make it into the open class eventually, we hope. So, those 3 things. Train with your final show in mind. Match the style that you want to see in March with what you're doing in November, December. Number 2, don't make basic training so basic. Add some improv. Play with staging. Play with equipment phrases and movement phrases, and they don't have to match your show. Like, they don't have to be from your show. They don't even have to be to that music, but something similar. Okay? And then the 3rd thing, train for at least 4 to 6 weeks before you start writing that show. Just trust me. I've done all these things both ways. You know, I, as a young director, used to get the show going in like October because that's when we started rehearsals for Winter Guard. And I was always so proud. Oh, we started our show, have it all done, first contest, and then the kids get bored, or we just don't know how to fix it, and they weren't well trained enough to fix it mid-season. When your kids are really well trained, you can make changes on the fly, and they'll get it. Trust me, because the 1 year my kids made finals at the WGI Regional in Tulsa, we changed really quick, changed work in between prelims and finals, and it wasn't much. It was a little dance ditty, and we changed about 16 counts of it, and we went from 3rd to 2nd place in finals. But the only reason I was able to do that is because my kids were well trained. If you don't train your kids well, they'll freak out. So I hope that helps a little bit. Feel free to contact me anytime. I've been visiting some groups at their rehearsals. It's early in the season. If you'd like me to come by, just contact me. I'm going to have a lot of free time. Not a lot, but some. So hopefully that helps. Hopefully I'll remember to make some more videos in the future. And I'm looking forward to seeing everybody this year and what you're going to come out with and getting to know everybody throughout the season. See you later. I don't know how to stop this video.